Welcome to Future Role Model, a podcast that praises the unconventional and redefines what it means to be a role model. Today, I have in the studio with me, Ty Barnett. Ty, what's up?
Hey, how are you? How are you?
I love that you just waved at the microphone.
I know, sorry, I don't know how to.
He just got out of an audition, and so he's... Ty is...
Gotta love this game, don't you?
Dude,
gotta love it.
We are going to talk so hard about this. But Ty was one of the first people that I met in LA as a comic that I didn't already know from Chicago.
Yeah.
And I immediately I was talking about this with Justin Harrison on last week's episode. Okay. I immediately liked you because you offered to take me hiking the day after I met you, and you actually showed up, picked me and my friend up, and took us hiking.
That's right. It was not is the word euphemism? It wasn't that. It was actually hiking. It wasn't code for something else. It's like, actually, when I said, no, we're going hiking, she's like, oh, shit. Mm-hmm. He really hikes. Okay.
Yeah, and me and you used to hang out a lot back in the day. And then we just got busy. I don't know what happened, but I've missed your face. And
I miss you too.
We went and had lunch last week and caught up. And
yeah, lemonade.
Lemonade,
That's
man.
right. Send her some money. I just plugged you guys. That's right.
Dude, how hard is it to get sponsors, man? He's got a podcast too. Sponsors are tough.
Yeah. We're going to keep saying lemonade until you guys send her some money.
I called my friend. My friend has a rum brand in Florida, and I called it and had a conversation with him the other day. I was like, hey, do you want to sponsor my podcast? Do you want to be the first one? And he was like, yeah, with T-shirts. And I was like, I don't need T-shirts.
I called for the rum. That's what I called for.
I would like a lot of rum to give out to people and to drink while I'm podcasting, please.
Yes.
So, Ty, tell everybody kind of what you've been up to. I mean, God, how many years ago was it that you shot your special that I went to? Remember up on that crazy hill?
I know. The Barnsdale. Yeah. It's been a few years, but you know what? I'm up to a few things, I guess. I do my podcast with Ian Harris called Critical and Thinking. I'm an actor as well. SAG, baby. But my first love is still stand up. And so I go on the road from time to time. But lately, I've just been really trying to promote the podcast and trying to sell a couple shows that are comedy based, but still it's a grind.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I never understood. When someone tells you you have to be built for something, like, this is a business you have to be built for. Like, this is not something you can just kind of wing. Like,
100%.
Thick skin, you need it. Tough mentality, you need it, because it's not an easy thing. So I just been kind of going through the process with that part, because stand-up is one of those, like, it's breathing for me. Mm-hmm. Not on some ego stuff, even though I'm good. But it's such a natural part of what I do that I don't really think about it the same way. I think about it kind of like, oh, I'm going to perform, and that's what it is. But learning this part of the business, and you know this, the writing, the directing, the getting it through to someone, getting someone to like it to get it through to another person. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at now, where, trying to sell a couple shows and, just trying to hustle in this business.
It's not enough to just be good at a thing anymore, which is kind of tough, because a lot of comics that I do know struggle with the business side of entertainment. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I tried to make myself learn when I first moved out here, because I was like, fuck, if you don't have a quote unquote brand, and some people don't even know what the fuck that means when they say it, what's your brand? It's like, I'm a human. How do you even sum me up in a phrase? No. Like, you can't.
Someone asked me that, I remember one a comedy booker years ago said, he's like, Ty, you're funny, man. I can't take that away from you. You're super funny. He's like, man, but you need a niche. And I'm like, my niche is being funny. That's the niche. But exactly. How do I need more of a niche than being funny? So I get what you're saying about the brand, because it's sad in one way, but in another way, it motivates you to do more stuff than what you were already doing. Because when I started in the business, it really was just be funny. We do everything else. I remember my old agent used to get mad at me because I used to have this book of all the comedy clubs across the country. So you would sit down and do all your bookings. So I would go through this list, and I had all these relationships with these comedy clubs. I was sending out all my VHSs a long time ago.
VHS.
I know.
Shout out to VHS.
You see, all that gray hair just came in. But and I remember my point is that my agent would get mad at me because they would be like, no, that's us. That's what we do. We do that for you. You don't have to do any of that. And I'm like, but I already kind of got a relationship with these guys. Long story short, that's no longer the thing now.
Yeah.
They want you to do everything, and then they just kind of put you in front of people. And I think so on one end, like I said, it helps you because you learn all this other stuff. But the other end, you're like, you guys should still be doing this. Could you imagine if we combine the forces of what we know as promoters now and their connects?
Oh,
my
I know.
God, it would be amazing.
Well, and that's what gets so challenging too, because I had met with a guy he's kind of helping me with a number of things, but he does a lot of overseas booking formerly for DJs and bands, and now he's trying to add comedy to that. And we met and we were talking about it, and he was like, "Give me the numbers for what you get like touring in the US." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to give you some numbers, but I want you to brace your asshole for squeezing really tightly because you're going to be shocked." And because I mean, like same with bands. I mean, comedy, it's so saturated that you can, like, somebody will do jobs for cheaper. So pay is really, really, you have to be very clever to be able to create shows and tours that actually generate income. Yeah,
it's harder because I think since it is so saturated and everyone is considered a comedian. Which, I mean, come on, man. And I always use this. I use this connect with American Idol versus Last Comic, right? So let's say with American Idol, it's been on, it was how many years?
Like 200.
Exactly. So it's been around a while, right? But the reason why it keeps being around, and it went away for a while, came back, but the reason why it's still around is because the one thing that was constant is that no one doubted the top 10. Right. No one said, "Oh man, how the hell did you get Gilbert Gottfried in there singing? He doesn't sing." But with comedy, it's been this thing of, okay, well, we're not picking the funniest people now. We're picking the niche. We're picking the person. We're picking the gay person. We're picking the midget. We're picking the black person. So as opposed to it being a talent-based thing, it is more like a casting thing. So when you have people in the business nowadays that just say, okay, well, I got this many followers. Well, how much time do you have? Well, what do you mean time? How much time on stage do you have that is constantly funny? Oh, well, I don't really get on stage like that. Then how the fuck are you? How are you in this business?
And that's why the whole thing happened at JFL. I think, did we talk about that over at lunch?
We talked about it at lunch, yes.
Yeah, because when you try to... I don't ever want to diminish what somebody's hustle is. Like I completely understand that building a YouTube channel and building a following that way is its own brand, and it's very clever and very hard in its own
way. That's a separate thing.
But it's separate from stand-up.
Yes.
So I mean, to be able to be funny and then edit something funny is one skill, but to be able to be funny on stage with crafted jokes is another skill.
Way different.
So when you try to mash them together, it doesn't always go well. No. And that's why, I was like, more power to big festivals like JFL for having, they had one video gamer who came and sold out a giant theater, and he was just like doing kind of like a TED talky kind of showcasing of his skills intermixed with each other on stage, and so many people came out to see it, and that was at Just for Laughs.
See?
So you can do those things. They have to just kind of be their own thing. You can't throw a YouTuber into a stand-up show.
Don't throw it under the umbrella of stand-up, because that's not fair to the people who've actually worked at it and put energy into it and have a skill set. It's like you probably don't watch a lot of karate movies, but I grew up watching karate movies.
I do.
So there was like, there's always a scene where in the beginning the dude gets his ass kicked, and so he has to go to the dojo and train. So he climbs up the mountain with the buckets of water and everything. He's hitting the sticks and all that. He gets better. He comes back and he beats up the villain at the end of the movie. Now it's this thing where the guy trains, he gets the bucket, goes up, and there's 8 million people already there, and they didn't have to have buckets. They were just like, oh, you know what? Oh, dude, they said we're cool with the buckets now. We're fine. We just got to be in it. And like, but I trained. I did all the training. No, we're not into training anymore. Yeah. We're all ninjas. we're all experts now. And I feel like that's the part in this business that hurts the actual product, because it's not, if you are a bad comedian, it will be exposed. It may not be exposed that moment, but it will get exposed at some point. And I think it gives the brand of comedy, speaking of brands, it gives the brand of stand-up a really bad name, because like I said, like that guy who sold out that arena, or had all those people in there, How many people do you think were entertained versus, oh, we thought we were going to see comedy? And,
right.
You know, so I think it's a little different.
Absolutely. How many times now have you done late night? You've been on...
Man, it's been a few. The Tonight Show about 3-4 times.
Yeah.
Nickelodeon, Ferguson when he was on. Bad Boys of Comedy. It's another one.
You've done Comics Unleashed a bunch.
Comics Unleashed. So yeah, it's been a few. And
it's a lot.
But you know what? Here's why I say the difference was when people came to me and asked me about those shows. I always say, you know what? Here's the set. Let me know what you need. I can adjust this. I remember with the Tonight Show, their original bookers, Bob Ross and Mark Reed. Bob Ross. Oh my God.
Bob Ross, like the painting Bob Ross.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna do a tree. There's a tree here. There's a tree. I'm just kidding. But they would come to your show. They would come to your actual show. They say, Natasha, okay, you're performing at the Comedy Magic Club. We're coming to see you at the Comedy Magic Club. They would hand you notes off of everything you said. And you would have to do it that way. So it was this process from the booker to the comedian that cared about the product. Now I don't think it's always the same thing, but I think now the onus on the comedian should be more. Like you should have this honest ear about what you put out there. And I think someone still has to care about the product. Someone has to.
Yeah.
Because if no one cares about the product and you just care about the quantity and you don't care about the quality, it's going to get called out.
For sure.
So.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about like, because I know this is something we've talked about too. Is there a spider?
An ant.
There was an ant crawling on Ty.
Man, I hope that wasn't the dude from the movie. Sorry.
You just ruined a whole character.
Damn it, no sequel?
You killed a main character, man. We were talking about earlier because he was coming from an audition, and like last week we were talking about audition stuff and had to do some rescheduling because of that. But you've been in this game in LA for how long now? I've
been in LA officially like a resident, probably about 12, 14 years, something like that. Like I was coming before that. I know. And you know what I love about, I always tell people, like, if I was not in this business, I probably wouldn't live in Los Angeles.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I like California. I'd probably live on the outskirts, but I would not be in the city if I was not in this business.
I would live in San Diego. I've said that a million times.
San Diego's great.
I love San Diego.
Yes. And it's expensive as hell, but it is a really nice town.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this thing like, you know, and I know we've talked about like the grind and the fact that like, you know, there's so much out of your control with these callbacks and castings. Like Ty just got called back for something today and they made him do it.
Something totally different.
Something totally different than he was called back to do.
Two things totally different, which is I'm like, how? I don't even get to do the original?
When you realize like what goes into trying to get a job in this city, like it's, you know, I think about my dad who does construction, right? And he'll bid for a job. There's maybe 5 other people bidding for it. Generally, he'll get it. His odds are pretty high, but he works all year. All right. You know, we bid for like 15 jobs a week and maybe get 1 a month.
That's right.
I mean, it's fucking terrible odds. So it's what's good about it is when you've been in it this long, because like you said, you have to have like the stamina for something like this. Yeah. You have to learn to not take anything personally.
Which is it's way harder than it's easier said than done.
Because you get so close sometimes, or you know, you get to a callback and you know it's between you and like 2 other people.
You try not to count that money beforehand.
Oh, I know. And some of these jobs pay like crazy, and that's all you can think about because all you want to do is just have a chunk of money for a little while.
That's it.
And then there's other people that make that every week, and you're like, would I prefer to be like an accountant in Ohio?
No, because you know what? And it's funny you said that because in the theme of your podcast, actually, hopefully it kind of relates to the story I'm about to tell. You know John Cryer. You know John Cryer, right? So they were interviewing John Cryer because he got a star on the Walk of Fame, right?
Oh, awesome.
And they were talking that he's one of the few entertainers in this business that has enjoyed success as a child all the way into being an adult. He said, because that's rare. You're either a child performing that pops or you're an adult that pops. It's rare that you can make that transition. So they asked him, they said, hey, man, what would you tell people who've been in this business this long and it maybe hasn't popped for them yet and they're still in the grind and they're still trying to do it? And he said, and I'll never forget this. I actually think about this all the time. He said, well, if you can walk away from this business, do it. He said, leave. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's one of the worst businesses on the planet. It's a horrible business. He said, but if there's even a little bit of you that would regret walking away, He said, you got to keep going.
Yeah.
You have to keep going. He says, that will be the thing. And every time I have moments where I'm like, fuck, I think about that, because this isn't it's a marathon.
Yes.
So it's not the easiest thing to do, but his was crazy about it. Do you ever notice that when you do book stuff, it erases all the negativity?
Oh, yeah.
Everything is gone.
And things just end up kind of working out. If you tend to have a positive outlook or a silver lining outlook, things just end up kind of working out. John Cryer was in the audience the first time I ever performed in the improv lab, before the improv underwent its transition, when the lab was just its independent theater with no alcohol in it. So the improv lab used to be attached to the Hollywood Improv, for those of you that have never been.
You had to go out and around, come around, that little small side door to the thing.
Yeah. So it was a separate stage, but you couldn't even get through the side like you can now. There wasn't alcohol in there. It was like a straight up, like, what would you call it? Like a black box type theater, but like, 15 seats. So the first time I ever did stand up in that room, I was happy to just be performing in the body of the improv.
Yep.
John Cryer was in the front row. He was supporting, because it was a sketch group opened and then the stand-ups went up afterwards.
Nice.
And he was so supportive and like cheering his friends on. And like, a lot of people that have been in the business for a long time, the reason that they have is because they probably are a good person for the most part. I mean, there's a couple bad apples out there, as we found out this year and last, but that's why I try to tell people, like, there's certain things that don't resonate with me personally, like building a YouTube channel or doing like certain types of sketch videos and stuff that people are like, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? I was like, I don't know. I don't do stuff that doesn't feel like I should, like I want to do it. And if it makes sense for me, I'll do it. But I was like, I'm fine with this being a process. Like I don't need to be famous like tonight.
Because that's what it is. It is a process. And I always want people to understand that, again, if you decide to get in this business, I mean, the rewards of it, I mean, you book something, I'm not gonna lie, it just makes you feel like, all right. And then you go back to this feeling of, okay, I gotta do the next thing, I gotta do this. I remember when I first started doing like commercial stuff, and I would go into these rooms and I would see these people that always booked. And I'm like, why the fuck do you have me here? These people always book.
Yeah.
And then someone told me, there's like, they called you too. So they want you in the room too. So you have to get rid of that attitude of that self-defeatist attitude. Go in there with this attitude of, okay, well, I got this shot. So, and then I started booking. And then I started getting those looks from people like, hey, this motherfucker's here all the time. So it's a crazy dynamic in this business. But the thing that has to stay constant is your belief in yourself.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying this as a person who has moments where I'm just like, but it has to be this thing in you that knows that you're supposed to be where you are. Because I remember you in Chicago, and I remember when you were thinking about coming out, we'd had these conversations and you're like, well, I don't know if I really want to go out right now, but I know I need to do it at some point. And then you came in, hit the ground running, so but now let me ask you this. Do you think you would be where you are now if you had waited another year, two, and just put it off?
No. Because it's funny how things come full circle. Tonight, actually, I'm meeting somebody, a friend that I met at JFL for beers at this place called Rush Street. Rush Street is a Chicago bar in Culver City.
Oh, okay.
So when I was in Chicago, like trying to figure out if I was going to move to LA, if I was going to move to New York, what the fuck I was going to do. I was going through a breakup, like all this stuff. I was bartending like 3 different places.
I remember that bar.
Yeah. And one of the places I worked at was I was just having a conversation with my GM, and I was like, can you please give me next week off? I need to go to LA. And he was like, for what? And I'm like, well, it's back when I had my Comedy Store show. Right. So I used to fly in like every month and just, hustle and run that show. Right, and he was like, oh, if you're going to be in LA performing, my friend owns Rush Street. You should run a show there. So I called up the owner of Rush Street, having never seen the place. He gave me the green light to do a show. I feel like you came and did a spot there, or if not, it was right before we started hanging out a lot. But because I only knew like 6 comics at the time. And so I did my show at Rush Street, And my friend Dave Cavalier, he's an awesome musician. He used to live in Chicago. And so I called him up. I was like, you're a musician. You have all this sound equipment. Can I come and get it from your storage unit and take it and go set it up at this show? And I like set up this show on this patio of Rush Street. And I did 3 shows there before I moved to LA. And I was like, all right, if I can at least run independent shows and find a way to like bring in a little bit of money, I can make LA work.
It's a hustle.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And I think if you go into it knowing that, I think it's easier for you to get through it. I think sometimes I admire, I'm not gonna lie, I admire the people that just pack up and go.
Right.
There's a part of me that feels like, whoa, but I have, I have kids. And at the time when I came out here, my kids were like young kids, so I had to do things and still provide for them. Like now my kids are grown, so it's not really the same thing. But it was this mentality of I have to earn. Like I have no options to not. So when I did move here, like I made a whole plan. Like I used to work at a hospital in Seattle. And so I would come down here, stay on my friend's couch, but I would stack all my money up. All the money I made from the job went into the bank, and all the money I got from comedy went to paying bills. So it was like this huge hustle, because not only was I hustling for myself, but for my kids. So by the time I came out here, I had a little nest egg, but I also had a plan of, all right, I'm in it. This is what I'm going to do. And I did everything. I mean, I'm talking about, this is when I was very good at networking, or as I like to say, pretending that I like people that I don't. And I got to be honest.
It's so true.
Come on.
Otherwise, it's just meeting people and or socializing. But networking is when you make it a chore. And
you walk into the room and you're just like, okay, just give me 10 minutes. Hey, what's up? Da, da, da. And then you walk out of there feeling like, oh, God.
Yeah, it feels like personal soul rape.
Yeah. So, but like you feel like, I know, okay, this is all part of the process. This is what I got to do to get to the next step.
Yeah.
So the fact that you came in already knowing before you moved here, the thing that I've noticed about you is that you've always had a hustler's mentality. Like you've never been lazy. You've never been like, I'm going to get by on the fact that I'm a nice looking woman. I'm not going to get by on, I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to put the effort in. I'm going to do this. And you see the dividends of it. You see it paying off. And I think I really wish more people would take that approach to it, as opposed to thinking that it's just going to happen. You can't do that. That's not a realistic thing. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen for people. I'm pretty sure there are those anomalies where it's like, hey, I saw you in a coffee house. Here's an 8 movie deal. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, it doesn't happen that way. The work has to be put in, whether it be putting shows together, whether it be writing, whether it be producing, any of these things. Some people, for some reason, they still think it's going to be
which for some people it is, which is great for them. But it's funny you say about the look thing, because I was just talking to a bunch of female comics about this the other day. Thank God I have a group of like really awesome women in comedy that are pretty great, and we all support each other, and like, because I feel like that's kind of not always that common in entertainment, especially amongst women. Not
in this city.
Like they'll say they support each other, but they actually don't. Like, so it's nice to have a group of people that we can actually do that with. But I mean, you're an attractive guy too. I'm sure people have always been like, oh, why do you do comedy? But I told my friend this the other day. I was like, I grew up in Wisconsin. My town was like 95% attractive people. It was Norwegian settlers. So everybody was, it was Norwegian. Wow. Everybody was blonde, blue-eyed, tall, had great figures. And
kind of like Children of the Cornish?
Like literally all my friends were Stepford wives, but like minus the time period. And so nobody gave a shit.
Right.
Like nobody cared about people. Everybody was athletic. Right. Like nobody cared. Damn. So you had to be cool.
There you go. So you had to have a personality.
Personality mattered, number one.
Yes.
And all of my friends developed these amazing personalities.
Good.
So like the people I grew up with are not only attractive, but they're really fucking awesome too.
See?
And so it was kind of this interesting like little
But I love that, because it's rare that you find both.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that, especially in a place like that, I always say, wait a minute, the Midwest is way different than any other place. People don't understand that. I always tell people, the thing about the Midwest, the good and bad about the Midwest, is that those people are genuine. Either they're genuinely nice or they're genuinely assholes. It's one of the two. Like you're not gonna get bullshitted.
Yeah.
And if someone says something, that's really what they think, and that's really where they're coming from. Whereas here, like I had to get used to people smiling in your face and not caring one bit about it. And I would always tell people, like, I'm bad with names and birthdays, but I remember faces, right? So I may not remember your name. Like I can talk to you and have a conversation with you, and honestly, 5 minutes later, I'm going to forget your name. That doesn't mean I don't like you. It just means that my mind is not like that. But here's the thing that's constant. I'm always going to treat you like I care about talking to you. Yeah. And I think that's the difference with people, because when I would run into people at the Improv or the Comedy Store, and in my mind, I'm like, fuck, I can't remember this person's name. But I remember the moment that we talked, that I'll remember certain things. And I talk to people with that kind of energy, like, oh, hey, how you doing? How you been? It's not like, oh, how you doing? And I don't really care how you doing. Yeah. I really care about how you doing. And that's the one thing that I've tried to maintain through all of these years. So if I do run into somebody and we do have a conversation, it is coming from a place of being genuinely, oh, hey, what's going on? How are you? I find that with me sometimes, like I'll go in and you know how like you go into the Improv and they say conversation in the Midwest is, hey, oh, wow, you look great. You know what? I saw your brother the other day. Cool. And you know what? Saw your dad. Love his construction business. Cool. Blah, blah, blah. That's a conversation in the Midwest. A conversation in LA is like, oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah.
You're looking for anybody else in the room.
Your dad does construction.
Oh, I hate those people.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you just like.
When he's doing the impression, and I do this all the time, where people are looking over your shoulder constantly to see if somebody better is in the room.
Is anybody here more important than you in this room?
And I've always based, like, the person I'm meeting with tonight, the reason we bonded at JFL is in Montreal, like everybody in the industry is at this festival. And I was at the bar one day at like 3 o'clock waiting for Godfrey to come down from his room, and we were going to go like bounce around. And this guy I hadn't met was sitting next to me, and he works at CAA. He's a touring agent. But I won't say his name, but really, really cool guy, but I didn't know who he was. And so he had made some comment to me that was funny, and I said something back to him that was funny. We were just bantering for a minute. And then we had like a normal conversation that wasn't to do with anything comedy or industry related.
That was refreshing.
And then at the end of it, he was like, let's all meet up tonight. You know, I'm friends with so-and-so. And he knew a bunch of people I knew, and I didn't know that, but we figured it out pretty quick. Obviously, most of the time at festivals like that, that's the case anyway. But it was really refreshing. And he's like a really dope person. And so we were like, let's go get some beers. And we finally found a day to go do it. So we're doing that tonight. But it's... in my soul, I can't make friends any other way than that. Like I can't.
I'm old school like that. I need to actually, there has to be some kind of connection to where even if we connect on something, like you said, it's random. It may not be business related, but it's something that we can connect on. And that's the end to the regular conversation, which leads to other things. Like I've done shoots with people. I've done, shows with people where, we have conversations and it's about everything else. But then when the business comes, okay, now let's work on this business. But we have this connection beyond this that makes the work relationship even better. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a sports dude. Like I talk about sports. I talk about politics. So if we talk about politics, we might have this conversation and be like, okay, cool. And we're getting ready to start rolling. And all right, cool. And here we do. But then during breaks, like, can you believe this fucking, so it is, I always feel like, it's easy, and this is why I love New York versus LA people sometimes. For sure. Because the thing about New York is you're not going to get bullshitted there either, because they don't have the time. They don't have the time. And what I love the most is that being funny still matters more. Still matters. Yeah. So I go to New York with this thing of, and I used to always hear it all the time before I visited. It was like, man, people in New York are mean. They're horrible people. I was like, nah. What I've seen is that they just have stuff going on and they don't have time for bullshit. Yeah, that's really what it is. So when you have people that have a genuine connect, because you need that here. Because you can do the business. We can do the business. We can sign a contract and say, okay, cool, Natasha, this is what we're going to do. These are the ins and outs. But let's say we sign up to work together and we got to be together 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't really like each other, if there's really nothing there, that's going to be a long ass 8 hours.
Yeah.
But if it's a connection there, it's going to be a fun day.
If you work on camera and stuff too, that kind of stuff reads.
Yeah.
Like you can tell when people have terrible chemistry. I feel like you can. That's the biggest thing. Like, you know, I've also had conversations with a lot of comics who have been signed with, you know, the biggest management companies or the biggest agencies, and they're like, oh, my agent this, my agent that, like we don't have this type of rapport. And I'm like, well, that's because you're with a really giant, you know, like you got to expect the space that you're in.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why I have the team I have, because I really like them all and we're highly communicative and we get along great, you know?
See, and that makes a difference.
I think it makes a huge difference. I mean, especially if you're not Brad Pitt. Like, I'm not Brad Pitt. So.
You're better looking than Brad Pitt. Sorry, Brad Pitt.
So, I mean, you like, right, you know, at this point in my career, I'm like, I just want to have people around me that I like. Yeah. You know, I don't really give a shit about.
It's important in a business that's so cutthroat.
Yeah.
You have to, like, you can't have, like, I remember this is years ago. I never do it anymore, but I was going through this non-dating phase, but I was in the phase of, all right, I'm out there just kind of hanging out. And me and my friend went to a club. We went to the Dime. And we met these girls at the Dime. It was 4 or 5 girls.
You used to love going to the Dime
all the time,
and I'm performing there tomorrow night. It's funny. Well, every time I go there, I think.
Let me tell you something. Adam Hunter. He knows how to run that. That room is geared for him specifically. Yes. Because no matter where the energy is in that room, he will bring it back. Yeah. If someone went up before him and didn't have a great set, he'll bring it back. He's awesome. He is made for that room.
He's good for that room.
You know what I'm saying? So I've always told him that.
Anyway, back to the Dime.
But I remember we went to the Dime, and again, it was one of them rare moments in my life where I was like, you know what? Let me invite these. Me and my friend Don, we said, let's invite these girls back to the house. So we invited them all back to the house. And within minutes of them being in the house, I go in the other room, change clothes, I put on my sweats and everything because I'm at home. I'm gonna wear what the fuck I want to wear at my house. So, but I come out, one of the girls is doing coke. Not only is she doing coke, she's doing coke on my plates, which are black plates. So I'm like, wait a minute, did you just pull a fucking plate and just start doing coke? And I look at my friend and I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, dude. I said, never again, bro. Never again. This will never happen. So that moment told me I'm a certain person, but I'm not that person. So my personality is geared towards, if I know you, cool. We have an intimate setting, great. But I'm not a party dude. I'm not a crazy dude like that. But I had to have that moment to know the type of people I don't want to be around. Some people in the city don't have those moments. They still feel like, oh, yeah, we can go ahead and do this. And then they get weirded out when shit gets crazy. I'm not that dude. I show up for work. I go home. I show up for work. Yeah. I go home. So I feel like it shapes you, the type of experiences you have. You've had better experiences here, so that's why your mentality is the way it is now. Like, you didn't come here with this crazy, like, oh, I'm gonna go to all the parties and get crazy and all that. No, you're still grounded because of your experiences around you. Some people lose that and they don't know how to get back on track from that. I
think that's why I'm really grateful I didn't move here when I was 22.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because, the type of things I even started seeing I moved here when I was 26. And I was exposed to a lot of stuff like that too. Now, at least if you're going to do blow in somebody's house that you don't know, ask. You got to just say, hey.
How do you just pull out black plates and start doing?
Hey, man, can I use one of your plates to do some drugs? And then they'll say yes or no. And then you know if you belong there or not.
And people don't understand there's a difference. Because if she would have put out a joint, I'm like, okay, people smoking weed, that's fine. But you don't pull out coke.
It's just a different level of party drug.
That's all.
Well, and that's what I realized too. Like, there's certain things. Etiquette, and also just knowing what you do and don't like. I love being at an age where I just know what I do and don't like and who I do and do not like to be around. There's certain places I just will not go. Good. I've never been a club person. You know that. I've always been like a bar, a dive bar or a bar person.
Those are some of the best places, the Well.
Oh, yeah. That's another place that we used to go and hang sometimes. But yeah, even when I was 21 and 22, I hated going to clubs. I didn't like wearing short dresses.
It's not the move.
It was just not my game, you know, and those weren't the people I wanted to like that wasn't the type of guy I was attracted to.
I don't feel like you can build a whole lot with people like that. I think when moments like that happen, like they're cool for a second, and then you're like, nah, I'm out. It's kind of like the early, like the improv nights. Like you go to improv and you say, you know what, I'm just gonna hang out for a minute. That's it, and I'm out. 4 or 5 drinks later, you're like, oh shit, I gotta get up early tomorrow.
Exactly.
I don't know why the hell I did this.
Exactly. Yeah, some of my best nights have been when I was like out by myself with no plan. Like in Chicago, there was one night that I ended up taking a pedicab home from downtown, and I stopped at the Wiener Circle in Chicago. Have you ever been there? The hot dog stand? And it was pouring rain, and I used to love when I knew it was going to rain, just like wearing no makeup and not doing my hair and going out in something mediocre and planning to get drenched walking home because I thought it was fun. And so I was at the Wiener Circle drenched, and Vince Vaughn was there, and he was making fun of the fact that I was drenched. He probably was drunk, but he wasn't doing it in a mean way. He was like, oh, it's pretty, you know, I was just sitting on a fucking bench wet eating a hot dog. Like, why would you not make fun of that?
That's right.
But like, those are my most fun moments where I've just been out fucking around, not like at some club, like taking Jaeger bomb shots or something.
It's not the move. It's not the move.
What would you say inspired you to move to LA in the first place? Did you have somebody that you kind of patterned a career after or wanted to?
What inspired me... I'm still inspired by people like Richard Pryor. The reason why is because I remember the first time seeing Pryor perform, and I remember thinking, man, this dude gets paid to make people laugh? Like, that's got to be not the easiest. That's got to be the greatest job in the world. And I remember then I'll start watching other comedians. So what made me make the move was in Seattle, you can be a big fish in a small pond. And I had achieved everything that I really wanted to achieve. Like I built up my set. I was starting to make connections in other cities and stuff like that, Los Angeles being one of them. And I said, you know what? I got to do it now. Like I have to go now, because if I don't go now, then I'm going to get stuck in this mentality of I can only do it here. Yeah. So when I moved, it was more so motivated by seeing my idols, what they achieved by taking these chances and going and taking their talent somewhere else. So when I moved, it was more so with that mentality of, okay, let's see how this plant plays here. Because I've always been the person that, like, if you're funny in one city, that's great for that city. But you don't really know how funny you are until you go to another city and then go to another city and go to another city. Because that material, I remember seeing a comedian, I won't say who he is, but I saw him here in LA. He was doing all these LA jokes and da-da-da-da. I saw him in Seattle, and he ate it hard. Yeah. And he did not know why he ate it that hard. And I was like, because they don't talk about the 405 here, bro. Yeah. They don't, you know? And it wasn't necessarily his fault, but it was the thing of understanding that you have to take this somewhere else. So when I moved, it was more like I was motivated to grow. I was motivated to grow and see what I could achieve in this business. So yeah. I think that's why I like to go to New York as often as I can, because I leave again next Tuesday for New York. But I'm always jealous when people go to New York. I've been going like almost every single month this year. Awesome. And it's amazing because you get so many shows in while you're there, and New York audiences will not give you any sort of courtesy. Not at all. So if your shit isn't working, you will know. You will know quickly. So anytime I'm working out new stuff, I'm like, okay, I have to do the new stuff in LA and then take it to New York. Yes. Do stuff in LA and take it to New York. And that's my system. Yeah. And then after New York, I go to Chicago. And then if it hits in Chicago, then I know I'm well, you working. The cool thing about New York, I always say, is you're going to get, each room has a different audience. The comic strip is different than the Comedy Cellar, which is different than Dangerfields, which is different than Caroline's and such and such and such and such. So whenever I've been, I've always felt like, well, if you're going to try the material out, you know, you're not going to get a better, it's like the dojo. Yeah. You're not going to get a better dojo than New York. It's not going to happen because I remember, I think my record was 5 sets in one night. That was the record. And I remember the joke, here's what's crazy is that the joke got better. And by the time I got to the 5th set that night, the joke was tight. That night. One night. That's why when people are ready to hit it big and stand up, most
people move to New York.
Yeah.
Because you refine very, very quickly.
What they tell you, if you want to act, go to LA. If you want to be a better comedian, go to New York. And it's true because, and this is why I say, I guess you really have to decide what's more important to you. Don't get me wrong. I want to act. That's why I'm in Los Angeles. I get it. But what has been able to sustain me in this business has been stand-up. The basis, meaning like if acting is slow for a moment, for whatever it is, I still can go on the road and I can perform an hour plus. You know what I'm saying? Because I've honed these skills. And I feel like that's an important part for people to understand. Like, this is not you can't bullshit this. Yeah. Not for, you know what I'm saying? If someone says, I want to see 5 minutes, tons of people can bullshit 5 minutes. A lot of people can bullshit 5 minutes. Yeah. But 30, 40, 45, an hour? Nah, you can't bullshit that.
Well, and I remember the first time that I accepted a feature job for 30 minutes or 35 minutes.
Yeah, and you actually got to have more than 30 to be able.
Oh, and I did not. I didn't have more than 35 minutes. Like, that was definitely stretching it for me. It was like doing everything I had ever done up to that point that I thought was like valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, this was like 6 years ago. It was so hard. It was so hard. I've never been that stressed to go on stage ever because I really don't get nervous for shows. You know, now it's just now I'm just at a point, like I said, I'm able to be honest with what I'm capable of. Yeah. And so if somebody's like, oh, do you want to headline this? I'm like, no. But I will do this, you know, I will.
Do you understand? But what you just said is a very important thing for artists to understand. And this is what actually helped me in Seattle. I never took any positions that I wasn't ready for. Yeah. Never. Like, I never hosted until I had the time. I never featured until I had the time. And I never headlined until I had the time. And I think a lot of people don't believe in that because they want that title. They want that title so much. I'm featuring. I am officially not the first person. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then they'll say, I'm the headliner. I am the last person. And they're like, man, you have to be prepared for that time. You can't, because again, I remember the very first time I headlined a gig, it was one of the most nerve-wracking. Yes. And I think at the time I had done a TV spot. And I think that's probably what got me to do it because they knew, okay, he was in it. He just did, I think it was Premium Blend or something. And so I was getting my first headlining spot at Harvey's. I think it was Harvey's. It was one of the first places. It's somewhere in there. Yeah. But I remember comparing my energy when I was hosting at Harvey's versus years later where I'm headlining. And I remember when I was hosting, it was one of the most laid back, fun experiences in my life. I'm like, y'all motherfuckers ain't here to see me. Y'all ain't here to see me. Y'all here to see this dude. So I can just kind of go up.
You can play
around and do all that. And I ain't got to exhaust all my time. I can just do a few jokes and bring the next person up. And then when I had the headline, I remember sitting in that area waiting to get ready to go up. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah. They came to see me. Yeah. I got to bring it. You got to bring it. You know? So it was, I think more people have to have that mentality. But you said something that was so, I love to hear that when you're honest with what you're putting out there and what you're getting back. Yeah. Because that is what's going to help you as a performer. Every joke you tell ain't gonna be the funniest joke. It just won't be. It won't. But the thing that you can do is learn and get better. That's always possible. Yeah. But the people that I see, and I see it a lot more in LA, is these cats that go up unprepared, get very little laughs. We call them baby laughs, baby chuckles. And they walk off stage feeling like they murdered. And I'm like, what show were you listening to?
I know. It's kind of funny to me because I'm like, you know, I have certain people that I look up to in the business, obviously, that I'm like, they crush every time. Every time I watch them, like, it was so cool to be with Godfrey in JFL, for example, because I went to his show with him 3 out of the 5 nights that he headlined, doing different hours. A different Godfrey. Hour every night. And he was crushing the entire time. Yeah. That's a fucking headliner.
He's a beast.
You know, and him and I had lunch and we were talking about all this stuff and I was telling him the same thing I was just telling you. I was like, you know, this is where I'm at. And because he was saying that we should, you know, maybe do something together down the road. And I had this tour that I wanted to kind of bring him on as the headliner. And he's like, why wouldn't you want to headline it? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Why would I want to headline that tour? That's not even possible for me. I was like, but you could, and then I can produce it and feature. And then that's fun for me, you know, and then I don't have the pressure of trying to do 20 extra minutes of material because I rewrote all my stuff like 2 years ago and I'm still trying to refine it and get it to a point where I'm proud of a new 45.
But I think that's what makes you better, is having an honest ear. A lot of comedians don't have an honest ear, and they go with. This always tell people who are starting out. One, don't do shows and invite all your friends to your shows. Don't. You're doing yourself a disservice. I get it. If you're trying to start something and get people in, it's cool to have sprinkles of them in if you have to do that. But if you're only surrounding yourself with people that know you, you're doing yourself a disservice, because they're going to laugh unless they're assholes. They're not going to not laugh. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I tell you, I did not invite people to come see me perform in Seattle when I started the Comedy Underground. I did not invite people to come see my shows for 2 or 3 years.
That's so smart.
Yeah, people did. And so by the time, half of the people that I worked with, I used to work at a hospital. Half of the people I work with didn't even know I was doing comedy.
Yeah.
You know, and then when I invited them to a show, there's like, you tell jokes.
And then by that time, you were fucking great.
By the time they came to the show, I was getting laughs, and it was like, oh, shit. You're actually
a comic.
You're funny.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, like, I've had friends that have come to see me perform, obviously, over the years consistently. But, like, one of my closest friends and my Muay Thai coach, Roxy, this amazing chick, she has one other friend in comedy, but nobody that she really knows that did stand-up. So she's started to come to shows to see me perform, and she's come to a tiny club in Van Nuys that only had 20 people at it. And then she came to see me at the Laugh Factory where there was like 100 people. And then she came to see me at the Ontario Improv that had like 350 people. And she was like, now I get it. Yeah. She was like, I saw you craft this joke from like tiny room to tiny room to bigger room to bigger room, and now you play it here, and it kills. On point and it kills. She was really intrigued by it, and I was like, oh, it's cool to see somebody that doesn't do comedy understand that. And
when they see the process, you know, because it's not the easiest thing to do, but when you get it, it's an awesome feeling. Like, I mean, come on, making people that you don't know laugh. That's an amazing thing.
And having your friends see that too, because they know, like, okay, I'm the only person here that knows her. Yeah,
but and
all these other people.
The fact that they feel relieved that they don't have to pretend. Oh, it's an awesome thing. Like, okay, good. I can legitimately say I like this. I get it.
Well, and then all my friends are honest with me too, because they know I like it. But they'll be like, oh yeah, that wasn't your best set. That joke didn't work. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That you know, but it's just, I don't know. I think just the honesty portion is so necessary.
We would the cats that I came up with in Seattle, we call ourselves the humor group. And by the way, I will put the talents of every guy in the humor group at our height. I will put them up against any comedy crew in this country, because we were like the Justice League. Everybody had a superpower. Everybody was bringing it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And what was great is that we were all honest with each other. Like, it didn't matter. We didn't care if the audience did this. We would pull you to the side and say, okay, that was cool, but this, but that. And that's how we got better, because we honestly cared about each other getting better, because we're on the same shows with each other. We're hanging out with each other. We're vouching for each other. Yeah. So when we see people go up, it was always this thing of, all right, I see that. I see you got the little girls over there laughing at you. It's cool, but what about this? And it would just help you get better. And on the flip side of that, though, whenever one of us had a bad set, it was the most hilarious thing on the planet. Because we knew we didn't normally have bad sets. So we'd be in the back rolling. It was like, you know.
Oh,
but we never laughed at, and what's crazy is that we never laughed at people either that we didn't know or people that we knew were new, because we were like, okay, you're still trying to figure it out. But if you were a vet and you're one of our boys and it's just not popping for you that night, oh man, we clowning you.
You give each other so much shit. I know, and you should. There was one night that God, this was like 5 or 6 years ago, probably. I played back when the House of Blues was still on Sunset. I played this show there, and I went up after. This was back when I was using a lot of my dirty material, and I went up after a girl who was dirtier than me and funnier than me, and had a lot of similar subject matter. Oh, wow. Had to follow her, and and I bombed so hard. And Doug Fager, I don't know if you know him, he's one of my best friends, made fun of me for like a fucking week.
Hilarious.
And after that, I was like, I have to change my material. Because this is too common. I'm going to run into this more often. I've got to find something that's unique for me.
When you're following someone, as I always say, is harder to follow someone's energy than it is their material. Because like, I'll tell you real quick, I'll try to make it quick. I know we got to go here in a little bit, but my very first time, not the first time in Dublin's, but you remember Dublin's.
Yeah.
And this is when Dan Cook was at the height of his superpowers. And that was his home. There's like Jordan playing at the United Center. That's what it was like.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I invited this young lady that I'd met in LA, because I was still living in Seattle at the time. I invited this young lady I'd met in LA to the show because I was coming back in town. I was like, oh shit, I'm coming back in town. I'm gonna be performing on Sunset. Well, cool. Let me invite her. Maybe we can have another night, another magical night. So I invite her to Dublin's, and Jay was running the show, and he said, hey man, Dane's gonna go up before you. He's only gonna do a few minutes, which we now know that's never the fucking case. So in my mind, again, still being kind of new to this process, I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll go up after Dane. It's fine. He's only doing it, in my mind, I thought he was only doing a few minutes. And I could see the girl. I saw where she was sitting in the back of the room. I saw her while the show was going on. I go up, and then Dane goes up, kills, right? I go up doing the same jokes, Natasha, that destroy other places. They destroy. These aren't brand new jokes. These are certified jokes. But they're getting not the great, because again, Dane's energy is just so all over the place. Like, whereas me, I'm like, I'm right here. You might get a little bit of, animation out of me, but so I can see each joke that wasn't popping. I could see her in the background, just body language, just like,
that sucks so hard.
Long story short, as soon as the set was over with, she said, oh, well, you know what? I kind of got plans. I got other stuff to do. So she bounced.
Shit.
And I'm like, how the fuck? So fast forward to years later, because again, that moment, but that was a teaching moment for me, because I said, okay, you know what, Ty? Because I went up and did not acknowledge who was just on stage. I went up thinking, all right, I'm going right into my material. And I think the audience was like, who the fuck are you? We've never fucking heard of you. But fast forward to years later, I had to follow Dane, not at Dublin's, but at the Improv. And in my mind, of course, I'm having those flashbacks like, oh, please don't let this be. But what I did was I changed the energy around. I acknowledged, I said, hey, this is such and such. You saw him, but, went into my material, crushed. Because I had to take that moment, learn from that moment, and say, okay, cool. So I think when people, like you said, you had that moment and you had to follow her and you had to see what kind of materials, you did not cower from that. You said, okay, now I got to learn from this. Again, it's one of those things that will make you a better comedian. Just learn from those
bombing
things.
Is necessary. Yeah. Failing is necessary. That's what this whole podcast is about. Anywho, I guess we're out of time, but I wish I could do a part 2 with you. We'll have to do it in like 20 more episodes. Ty, what do you have coming up? What do you want to plug?
A couple of things. The Critical and Thinking podcast with Ian Harris. You can get that. It's available now. A few episodes have been released already. The website is comedian Ty Barnett. Look out for a show that's coming up. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll put that out there. Couple show dates coming up. You can find that find those dates at comediantybarnett.com. There's Facebook is comedian Ty Barnett. The Twitter is tbarnett23, and the Instagram is tybarnett23.
Awesome. That's it. That's it.
Goodness gracious. I'm not getting on any more social platforms, man. That's it.
I know. We just talked about that at lunch last week. We were like, we would not be on social media if it wasn't for what we do. We wouldn't do it.
Not at all. I'd still be on MySpace, bro.
Yeah. I fucking love my MySpace. I bet it's still up there with my dancing Jameson bottles.
Hilarious.
And you can find me at NPH Comedy. You can find the podcast at Future Role Model on Instagram or at Role Model Pod on Twitter. You can follow the comedy studio at Comedy Pop-Up or at CPU Podcasts, and follow Ty and support comedy and keep going to see live comedy because it matters.
I just want to say two people that I wanted, because when I saw what the podcast was about, two of my greatest role models still to this day, my mom and my granddad.
Fuck yeah. And my mom and my grandma, and I'm hanging out with them in Chicago next week. That was the perfect way to end. All right. See you next Tuesday.
Peace.